Hello and welcome to another episode of From The Tilton Road, airing every week on YouTube, Spotify and Apple Podcasts. I'm Kieran, your host for this episode. Joining me tonight, I've got Elliot and Dan. How you doing, lads? You okay?
Yeah, good,
Yeah,
thank
good,
you.
mate.
Good. A couple of things to talk about. Obviously, some official confirmations have come out from the club now.
Finally.
Finally. It's only took us 2 days to get together for this episode. Firstly, we'll talk about the game on Saturday. I think we're all in agreement it was crap, and we'll draw the line there. And then Karanka's sacking. Let's talk about that. Elliot, I want your opinions first.
Yeah, I'm glad we ain't got to talk about the Bristol City game because I've completely forgotten about it.
Yeah, we won't bother about
that. Yeah, obviously, I think it was a long time coming, wasn't it? I think I had a funny feeling after that result on Saturday that he was going to get his P45, and obviously bizarre scenes on Sunday, according to some reports, and he's finally gone. So, I mean, don't get me wrong, as we were just saying at the start, we rewind back to August, and the scenes of Karanka sat in the pub garden having a pint of beer, and we were all getting excited, weren't we? And it's a bit of a shame, really, that it's got to this point. I think one thing I would say is when a manager comes into a club, I think a lot of the time it either works, it either clicks or it doesn't click, and sometimes if it doesn't click right away, it just takes a bit of time, doesn't it, for things to get going. But I think it didn't quite click, and we were sort of the assumption of maybe it's just going to take a bit of time. But with 10 games left and where we're at, there is no time left. You can't be afforded any more time. So I was surprised he didn't go after the Luton game, to be honest. So I think this was the right time. He had to go. It was just,
Yeah, I mean, the Luton game for me was the one where I thought this isn't going to work. And I would never say before the Luton game I was necessarily Karanka in, but I just thought that nothing would really change regardless. Obviously, I thought if we got rid of Karanka, it'd be someone unemployed. And you look at the names out there, did any of them really inspire change? The likes of Paul Cook was available at the time. I didn't think that had been something that would have changed our fortunes this season. A couple of other names. And even this time around, I didn't expect it to be Lee Bowyer, who we'll talk about shortly. So a bit sceptical, but it was definitely ultimately the right thing, I think. And obviously we'll talk about our opinions in more depth. But Dan, quickly onto you, your thoughts on the announcement.
Yeah, well, it wasn't a surprise at all. I think, it could have been down to the amount of goals we conceded. I think, if we lost 1-0, because the support he had from the CEO, and he might have still looked at the games before, he might have been, it was a tight one. But 3-0 again, for a manager that normally is so tight at the back. It was curtains, and rightly so. I've been one of his longest. I've been patient with him for so long because I just remember how excited I was at the start of the season. It gave me a fresh feeling of optimism, thinking he could be the man to take us forward. And I still, even up until the last week or so, I was thinking if we somehow scrape through this next season, he possibly could get rid of the players he didn't want. But we weren't in a position where he could take that risk because, and also you got to look at, if we went down anyway, there's no way he would have stayed. So we would have been looking for a new manager then. So why not get a new manager, at least give him 10 games to try and keep us up. So, fortunes weren't going to turn around. And by the looks of it, the players had gave up. Just going to hope the new man does it. It's a shame about the way Karanka went, but it was inevitable.
I think, obviously, Elliot mentioned the absolute frenzy on Twitter when Karanka was pictured in the pub with Dong and a couple of others. And I remember, all of us on the show were saying the same thing. This is a better appointment than we could have expected given the season we'd just endured. And Karanka had a proven track record. He'd never really failed at any championship club as such. You know, Forest fans might disagree to a certain extent, but in my eyes, he was doing a good job there. Middlesbrough, you can never doubt what he actually achieved there. Picked up a Middlesbrough club who were pretty much in the same sort of situation as we was. You know, underachieving. So, and I'm still adamant that this doesn't make him a bad manager. What he's done at the club hasn't made him a bad manager. He's not the only problem this season. It's widely known that the CEO, I don't even really want to say his name, is an absolute head case. He doesn't understand football. You read that article that came out yesterday about his birthday party. I mean, it's laughable. And then when you read the other parts of that about how Harley Dean almost didn't give an answer when asked if the manager had players back in, it tells you that the squad of players isn't really the right squad of players. There's obviously stuff in that squad, players in that squad who are rotten apples and they need removing. And arguably, you'd say, looking at that article, Harley Dean's one of them. And he's your captain. He's the person you've got to look to. He's too busy worrying about whether his dogs are breeding to be focusing on the game. His head's not in it. And if any player doesn't want to give 100% in every game they play because they're not behind the manager or they're not behind a certain member of staff or they don't like their teammate, they don't play for the club. It's as simple as that. Leave or find another profession. Because for me, half of them players, Harley Dean, San Jose, are stealing a living by saying they're a professional footballer, to be honest. It's embarrassing. I've seen better players in a Sunday League team. So, for me, they're as much to blame as Karanka. And I still think if Karanka walked into a club in the summer that was stable and run efficiently, he'd have success again. I genuinely believe that. But this club wasn't right for him at the time that he came in, and that's the truth for me.
Yeah, I think we're made for. It's a shame because I'd like us to advance to times where someone like that would follow his success on, and that's not me defending him at all because he's failed there. He's failed miserably, but it just seems like the people that suit Blues are always, you know, the hard-working grafters, the ones who are, like, you know, passionate. And not saying he wasn't passionate, but the ones who are visibly passionate. They're the ones that just seem to work here. And I think it's probably partly because that we're not good enough. We don't have a good enough team all the time to have, you know, we need passionate people. We just play on passion half the time. But I think you're right in the rotten apple thing with some of the players because this is a manager that hasn't really done bad anywhere else, and yet it might have not been the right connection. But it was only a few months ago where the players were all coming out, couldn't speak highly enough of his methods at training, saying that he was top class. Last year we would have lost that game if we, you know, saying things like that. But also, there's a lot of these players that have let down several managers. Now, whether they're good managers or not, you likes of Steve Cottrell, you've still got a duty to go out on that pitch and play, because at the end of the day, you're not doing it for the manager. Surely you've got to have some personal pride to fight for yourself. And I know low confidence can lead to looking like you're not trying as well. So I'm not saying they're all not trying or they're all not bothered, but you've got to do something. And at the end of the day, manager, as we've seen at Blues, the managers change quicker than you can blink, but the fans will still be there. And surely you've got one bit of motivation would be we've got to be in a decent position for when these fans come back.
And another thing as well, Elliot, they'll come to you again very shortly. You mentioned the players again. Failing for several managers, and we've spoke about this a couple of times on previous episodes. You know, your likes of Harley Dean, who's been under 5 or 6 different managers already. Can only really remember one decent spell, and that was under Gary Monk. And yeah, again, he had Morrison next to him. Pedersen looked a world beater under Monk. What happened to him? I'm not buying that he's a bad player, but what's happened to him? Because he's not the Pedersen we had 12 months ago who was linked with a Premier League move. And the other thing these players have got to look at, the likes of Pedersen, is if his head's been turned because he was linked with Watford when they're in the Premier League and he thinks he deserves a bigger move, how does he think playing as badly as he is going to get him that Premier League move? Because a Premier League club isn't going to take a chance on him now. There's a reason he was only linked with Bristol City in the January window just gone. Because he's not performing, not good enough. 95% of that squad could go tomorrow. Would anyone actually be bothered if the only two I'd keep, maybe three, Sanchez, I'd keep Bella, and I'd keep Everidge. The rest of them, I'm not really bothered about. They could all go and we could replace them. Would we find replacements, arguably, that are any worse than what they're actually putting in? I don't know if we could. I think they are at rock bottom in terms of performances and output that they're putting into that side. So realistically, I mean, where's the Sunjic that we signed for 6 million? Who played Europe?
You tell me.
He played European football. He was linked with AC Milan, apparently. What happened to him? Where's he gone? Have we ever actually seen that Sunjic? I don't think we have. You know, Raheem Harper, a brilliant 1 minute. Next minute, you're watching him and thinking, bloody hell, someone shrunk Check-Endoy. So I'm lost. Scott Hogan, people say he's a confident striker. He had a game against Bournemouth. We still lost the game, but he scored 2 goals. That Hogan's disappeared again. He's not a confident striker. He just does it as and when he can be bothered. He's
cost us several points in the last few weeks.
Absolutely, with his chances missed. And also, you look at the fact that, like I say, he can't even be asked to stay on side for most of the game. He's a lone striker. He's the only one who's anywhere near the defence half the time, and he can't even bother to keep on side and look across the line before he makes a movement. It's not rocket science. It's simple, the basics of football, and the players have forgot all about them. Go back again, Harley Dean marking Jack Wilshere for the header the other week. You're not getting beaten by Wilshere in the air. Why aren't you attacking that? The goal Bristol City scored at the weekend, Pedersen's, well, I don't even know. I wouldn't even call it an attempted back pass. And then Etheridge hesitated. And before you know it, the ball's in the back of our net. Again, schoolboy mistakes. And they can't be down to the manager. The players aren't putting in anywhere near enough effort. I'm not having that the players are doing this in training because it's what, they don't understand what is expected of them. What's expected of you is do the basics right and then work on the rest from there.
Listen, I said this on Twitter the other day. I don't apportion all the blame on Karanka. Half of it is on that dressing room. Harley Dean came out the other day, didn't he? And I think that was the final straw, to be honest, when he's coming out and saying, well, maybe we're not good enough. Well, you're professional footballers, and as we've said, on paper, are we really any worse than a Rotherham, a Luton, a Barnsley, a Derby at the minute? No, they should be performing far better than they are, as you've just mentioned. And I think I don't want to defend Karanka because he's got it wholeheartedly wrong this season, and it's not worked at all for him. And our problem has been for the last few seasons is that for some reason we always seem to need to have a clear out every summer, and it just no continuity at all. And the recruitment is just been appalling for some time now. And obviously we touched on Sunjic there. We're spending £6-7 million on a player, and let's be quite frank about it. He's nowhere near a £6-7 million player. Nowhere near. And I think it's definitely been highlighted this season where the recruitment's been completely and utterly wrong for Karanka. Centre back wasn't sorted out, and centre forward wasn't sorted out. And for some, we don't have a player. Unfortunately, Scott Hogan, he's not good enough, and Dean and Roberts, they're not good enough. I still yet to be convinced that Mark Roberts is a championship defender, as far as I'm concerned. I think the biggest mistake, obviously, unfortunately, was letting Morrison go. We don't have a leader, unfortunately, in that team anymore. There doesn't seem to be, for me, a leader in that changing room. Someone that's, going to pull rank, for all Morrison's failings in terms of his ability, his speed, he was quite slow. He was a leader, and he marshalled that defence for us for a good few seasons. And letting players go, unfortunately, I know their expiry date was past. Davis, Clifton Bell, but they were players that put in 110% week in, week out. And these players have now gone and left, and we don't have players, unfortunately, at the moment that are, let's be honest, can look in the mirror and say they're putting 110% in every week.
Right, it's funny you mention. You look at the team that done so well under Rowett when he was sacked 3 points off the automatic promotion places with, like you say, Davis and Clifton Bowd in midfield. Now, you compare them on paper to what we are told Harper and Sunjic are. Yeah.
You couldn't even compare, could you?
No. On paper, you put them down and you'd say, well, it's obvious that Davies and Clifton Bowd on paper will be the team in the relegation battle. But based on performances on that pitch, would any Blues fan in the right mind put Sunjic and Harper in their midfield over Davis and Clifton Bowd? What they brought to the team, the energy, the effort, they're not afraid to put a foot in, the actual want and will to play for the shirt. Have we seen that from any player this season, apart from, surprise, surprise, when Clifton Bowd was in the team?
Not really, no.
Hardly. No. Mark Roberts gets in the team because he can take a long throw-in. Have we done anything from one of them long throw-ins? Ever?
No, they'll just stand there and watch, don't they?
Yeah, we just stand and watch while it gets headed out. That's great. Get him out of the team, then what's he bringing to it? And then when I've seen a couple of times when he's not on the pitch, Harley Dean attempts a long throw.
Yeah.
What are you doing? Give it up. Just accept the long throws don't fucking work. It's... Again, I've said it already, the basics of football. Football is a simple game. And as Blues fans, realistically, we're a simple bunch of fans. We don't care if we win every week. We want players who put effort in and actually show they care for a start off. Like Dan mentioned, the managers who seem to do well are the ones who show passion and the ones who understand that it's a working man's club, in effect. But the managers are like that. We expect that from the managers. That's the managers that succeed, because it's what we expect from the players as well. That's what we want the players to be. Yeah. We don't want these players to be £6 or £7 million expert long passers like Ivan Sunjic was referred to when he was at Zagreb. We want a Davis.
An expert short passer.
He's not an expert at anything. Let's be honest. He's useless. I'd have no problems taking him out of the team and putting Elliot in.
Listen, this is my worry right now. This is my worry, lads. Is that, in the past couple of seasons, when we've been in trouble and we've needed to get ourselves out of a hole, we've always reverted back to players that are either leaders or are just men and want to put 100% shift in, and we've always reverted back to that, and it's got us out. It's got us out of trouble. Who are we turning to now? Who are we actually going to turn to now?
Literally, it's just Lee Bowyer that we turn into.
Yeah,
and he's not on the pitch. He's not on the pitch.
Read the article again. Has he been signed as player manager?
Could do with him playing, can we? Because I really, obviously, we're going to touch on it now, but I don't envy the job that he's got right now. He's come in at probably one of the most difficult situations the club's been in for many years, and
there haven't been many easy moments.
When you look at the fixtures that we've got coming up, he's not got an easy start to life at the club.
No, I think it'd be harsh to expect a manager bounce as such.
Mm-hmm. I think the term poison chalice gets thrown around a lot in terms of managers' jobs. I mean, people refer to the Newcastle job as a poison chalice. I mean, realistically, is it? You've got a 40 million, he's crap, but you've got like a £40 million striker in Joe Linton, for example.
And they're in the Premier League.
Yeah, and they're in the Premier League. Mark Ashley doesn't want to put money in, but they've got money. They've got a Premier League core.
They generate it.
Yeah, they've got a Premier League core. They've got a massive ground, a massive fan base. You know, the foundations in terms of the fans, that's what they say brings the life to Newcastle. They're the same as us. We've got passionate fans who genuinely care about the club. You know, you don't see no bed sheets thrown out in our stadium.
We don't want a lot, do we? We just want, and sometimes I think we don't expect enough, but the least we want is people, as Neil Warnock would say, dying for 3 points.
That's what it's about, isn't it, for us? Is realistically, it's a lot tomorrow under Bowyer, the first game against Reading. Now, all of a sudden now, we're saying, I don't know what to expect from us tomorrow. We could go out there and win tomorrow with this so-called manager bounce, and you don't know what Bowyer said to them on the training pitch. You'd like to think that he's gave them a few home truths. You'd imagine he has. It's Lee Bowyer. For Saturday with Karanka still as manager, you'd expect a loss. But tomorrow, if we go out there and you see a reaction, even if we lose, is there going to be any Blues fans out there who go, oh God, that's us doomed then? Or genuinely, we're going to go, that's a start. We've lost, but you could see a response from the players. You see that bit of effort that's been missing for weeks. Months.
Yeah, the biggest games for us where we have to take points. The next 4 games, you've new manager or not, and I know we're running out of time. You've got to be happy with the points that we take. If we take about even like 3 points, you'd have to look at, we're against some of the best teams in the league. The ones that we've got to look at then are your likes of when we got Rotherham around Easter, Nottingham Forest, Derby. They're major games. And at the end of the season, I think we've got Blackburn who by then, well, aren't playing for anything. You've got teams like that will fall out of whatever picture they're in. So it's against that. And before, if you don't mind me saying, before we move on to like obviously the new manager, I just wanted to say something like, you know, as we've said, the failures don't all come down to the manager in charge. It's even at the top. We know it's a shambles by the way he holds himself, by the things like, you know, giving Karanka a party bag on the way out, you know, things like that. Absolutely ridiculous, by the way. I don't think words could even do justice how mad that is. But it's even like, you know, the whack out every few years, how they want to play good football, like they sacked Rowett for it, they claim that he was at other jobs, but we didn't. Did he accept the jobs when he was linked to them? No, but he still got sacked. So I feel like something was up there. And even with Monk, the 2 good managers that they've sacked, they've come out and tried to assassinate him like, in the media. So I'm starting to think maybe it wasn't them, it was the board. But they come out and we want to play good football. So you'd at least expect somewhere down the line their philosophy of at least appointing managers to follow the same mould. We go from having Gary Rowett, okay, fair enough, that wasn't their choice. Zola trying to play good football. Then to Redknapp just to save us. Then Steve Cottrell, and this Steve Cottrell known as tiki-taka football. No. Then Gary Monk, again. Yeah, he played some good football at Swansea, but that's more of he sorts the basics out. So what are they actually, if they say, you know, they want to pretend to be organised, they've at least got to show that they are. They've got to show that they at least have a slight idea of what they're doing. But to be honest, I think it is a hard job for any manager while he's there, while Dung is there. And the one thing that I hope that we don't do in the summer is, you know, if we manage to stay up and everything's looking great, throws out a few tweets and we'll forget about what he's done again. I think now we've got to be firm with it.
I mean, that's the one thing that annoys me.
But he's the problem.
The one thing that annoys me
he's the problem. I was going to say, I know you want to have your say on Dom, and I'm going to let you. I just want to say this club's not going forward. It's not going to go forward with Dom there. He needs to go.
Just got to survive, haven't we? I've got to survive whilst he's there.
Yeah. I was gutted, like any supporter today, when you're still seeing quotes from him on Bowyer. I was really hoping that was him done. He was going as well. This club's not going anywhere with him as CEO. All the wrong decisions are being made, and all the people that actually care about the club have been let go and have been moved on. And I really worry for Lee Bowyer, because I feel like this is a free hit for him now. If we go down, I feel he'll still get a full support from the supporters next season in League One, and he'll get a fair crack from us anyway. And in terms of his reputation as well, I mean, he's coming into a situation where I don't think anyone really expects him to keep us up. With a team just below us with 3 games in hand, it's difficult. But yeah, we're not going anywhere with Dom. He needs to go. He needs to go as soon as possible. Go on, Kieran.
Well, I, like everyone, was hoping to see the news that Dong had gone alongside Karanka. That was some of the rumours were out there that he had done. Obviously, apparently this decision was taken out of his hands, although the statement says Karanka stepped down, which to me tells me it was a situation of they've gone to him and said, quit or we'll sack you, in effect. Or we've said you're sacked and Karanka's gone, well, you can't do that, I'll quit. You know, which I'd like to think he'd have that childish nature about him right at the end, to be honest. As Elliot says, we're not going anywhere under Dong. The bloke doesn't know football, but he doesn't know his arse from his elbow, let's be honest. Like Dan says, I'm sick and tired of every now and then he puts a gif out of a bloody cat running around saying he's busy. And everyone goes, hey, he's quite funny actually, isn't he? That's all right. Because he's got a bit of a sense of humour on Twitter, that's fine. He can be CEO for a bit longer, doesn't wash anymore. These fans that accept that, I mean, their thought process is beyond me. And then the big name fans, I mean, not to have a pop at anyone, but JK, for example, who is meant to be a really passionate Blues fan. He's got videos outside the stadium and so on and so forth. Yeah, he's in Dong's pocket because he gets a kit a few weeks early and he gets to go into the games beyond closed doors still. Well, are you a real supporter then? If you're willing to accept this nonsense from the top down because you get a shirt a few weeks early and you get to go into the grounds, you're not. Richard Wilford, everyone loves the fact that he breaks this news. That's great, but you've got to accept he gets the news because he's in Dong's pocket. He's Dong's mate. So that's why he doesn't ask the tough questions in these interviews with Dong. Oh, how you doing, mate? Did you have lasagna for tea last night? None of the questions like, are you going to sack Karanka? Are you going to quit as CEO? These people who the Blues fans admire, they're not doing it. They're not asking the questions. They're not putting the pressure on the people. There's no pressure on people like that. The fact, and I say Villa fans are ridiculous for getting their bed sheets out, and they are. But there comes a point when the fans are going to have to do something because it's not good enough. And us all just sitting here and accepting it as well, is it going to change anything? Because all they're going to look at, the board and Dong, if they just see us and all we do is throw out a couple of tweets telling Dong is a twat and stuff like that. But ultimately, they're going to go, oh, they seem all right, actually. They were worse last season, so we must be doing a good job again now. No, you're an embarrassment. You're an absolute embarrassment. You know, ultimately, I think if he's still there when fans get back in the stadium, there's going to be an absolute riot in that stadium on the first game. And unfortunately, that's going to put a bad look on Lee Bowyer's first game in front of fans, which ultimately should be in a sense, a celebration of the fact we've got a club hero in charge who gets the fans, who gets what it's about to be at the club. And ultimately, we're gonna tar that with the fact that everyone's just going to be hurling abuse at the director's box for 90 minutes. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see what happened at bloody West Ham and Blackpool, where fans just walk around with corner flags in the centre circle for an hour. You know, because ultimately that's what it's going to come down to. If they don't take action on Dong and get him out of the club, that's what it's going to come down to. The fans will take matters into their own hands. And right now, I'd say rightly so, because if that's what it's going to take, then so what?
The hardest thing is about it now. We've got someone that we really care about in charge, isn't it? It's one of them that plays against, because you don't want to ruin his experience for him, and you don't want to not give him and his team the full support, because we will want to. but we can't just. We've also got to do something. As long as Dunga's in charge, because the thing is, he's not under pressure at the minute because he's already been sacked once after Steve Cottrell got sacked, I believe, and he got reappointed because no one else is there to do the job because they don't want to give it to anyone outside of their little bubble. So it's a problem. But the worst thing is that we haven't been able to be there this season while his boss is here. Well, his boss is here because he's not. His boss isn't that like He's not easy to get hold of, like contact, like social media or anything like that. But if he was there and we was there for the whole 90 minutes or whatever, obviously supporting the team, but throwing abuse towards Dong, surely that would open their eyes. It's easy for them to avoid it because they've been over in China for most of it. So they're just seeing the results. Yeah, we're still in the championship. Okay, fair enough. They're not probably watching the highlights. They're probably not watching the reaction on social media. There's got to be a point where we can somehow just make someone say that he's not good enough. I thought it would be obvious anyway by the amount of managers we've got through. How many times I've had to bail him out, but obviously not.
Well, his decisions are now costing them money, aren't they? Let's be honest. I mean, it was his decision to get Karanka in, and don't get me wrong, us as supporters were all pleased with the decision initially when Karanka came in, and he was adamant that Karanka was going to lead us up the table. It's not happened. It's failed, and it's cost the owners, I don't know, best part of £1 million probably to sever his contract and whatever else. It's probably cost them to get rid of his backroom staff. So I think eventually the only thing that these people will notice is when their pockets are being hit, and it's money at the end of the day. So the more money that Dong is costing them with his poor decisions, they will hopefully start to wake up and see that he needs to go.
Well, I think, like you say, we was pleased when he was appointed, and I think for once, fans thought everyone knew Karanka, everyone knew what he was about, and everyone said, bloody hell, Dong has obviously had some sort of awakening and made a decent footballing decision. And like we've said, it hasn't worked out the way we wanted it to. And I think we all, one, wanted him to succeed, and two, thought we've got a manager capable of it succeeding. And ultimately, again, he's been let down by the dressing room and from the powers that be above him with Dong, because again, it's just a circus act, isn't it? Half the time, you look at some of the stories that come out.
It is, but everyone's to blame here, the dressing room. There's a lot of the blame should be apportioned to the dressing room here. This is to a large degree the same group of players that turned in 2 draws out of the final 12 games and 10 defeats last season, and back end of last season after lockdown. It was an absolute joke. And you know what? They started quite well, but as soon as the results started to turn against them again, the effort levels just weren't there. And you know what? Don't get me wrong, Karanka's decision making this season has been appalling at times, absolutely appalling. The chopping and changing, the changing of systems, the changing of personnel, the substitutions have been dreadful. But the players, these are the same players that have got a number of good managers over the past few years to sack. And I really wish Lee Bowyer could come in and just clear them all out tomorrow and have a new team, because I really feel that he's going to have a real job in his hands to keep this lot in the league this season.
My worry, and literally going to move on to Lee Bowyer now, and a more positive spin. So my first question about the Lee Bowyer era is ultimately in the summer, again, we're going to have the situation where he's inherited 6 different managers' squad players. He's going to want put his own stamp on things. He's going to want money to spend. You'd think that majority of that money is going to have to come from moving on the players that are currently in the squad. Do you think there's any manager out there worth their salt that is looking at a Blues player who would be up for sale and going, he'll do a job for me? Because realistically, you want to keep, like I say, you want to keep your Sanchez, your Bellas, your Etheridge. But I think that whole back four realistically could go.
Yeah, I do think the one in the back four who will probably get some interest, and it is because for most of the time he's been consistent. He's dropped off more recently again. He has had a few spells over the last year. I do think someone would take Maxim Collin. He's one where he switches off sometimes, but for the most part we've had him, he's been one of our more consistent players. But I think that would be the only one there. I think Pedersen's really burnt his bridges with a decent move.
Yeah, and I think, the players, I mean, arguably, you look at that back four, you'd probably want to keep Colin anyway. And I think, to a certain degree, if he gets back to the player we know he can be, you'd want to keep Pedersen. But at the same time, the way he's playing right now, you'd be happy to see him go as well. But Harley Dean, Mark Roberts, I mean, Clark Salter's only on loan. Is he looking at this and thinking this is a great permanent move for me? Harley Dean, Mark Roberts, is anyone going to want to touch them? I don't think so. And if they would, are they going to offer us the money that I'm imagining the board will probably want? I mean, Mark Roberts, was he £3 or £4 million?
Something like that. I do have a feeling about them too, that they're going to be like, although not criticising Davis, I just think we tried to progress away from those sort of players. I just think those two will sort of have that same feeling where they are here for a while, but hopefully just will be sort of like rotting on the bench.
I wouldn't even want them on the bench. Let them train with the under 23s, as far as I'm concerned. That's if the board don't shut the under 23s down as well.
Listen, I think, Harley Dean and Roberts, I might be being a bit harsh here, but if they were up for sale now or transfer listed, I wouldn't be surprised if the majority of sides looking at them are League One standard. And you look at some of the recruitment that we've had, recently. People were upset that Dan Crowley went out on loan to Hull with a view to a permanent move. Well, the guy can't even get off the bench for Hull. He had a couple of games, and that was it. Does that say? Does that?
He reminds me. People talk about him and sing his praises. He reminds me a lot of Marcus Maddison.
Yeah.
Is his attitude right? Is that what it is ultimately? Does he think that he's God's gift? Like he was it Arsenal as a youngster, if I'm right? He ended up in the Dutch.
He came to Villa, didn't he? He went to Arsenal, yeah, and then he went to Holland to get his head straight. That's a warning sign right there, isn't it? If you're a talented footballer and you've got to go over to Holland, which is a piss poor league, to try and resurrect your career. There should be a warning sign right there. We just don't, for some reason, recruit players with the right mentality. With players that are hungry and are winners, we don't seem to recruit them. Josh McEachran barely kicked a ball for us. That's had to drop down the leagues now since he's come back. I could go on and on and on. I can't be bothered.
It's because they're constantly looking under a different philosophy, aren't they? Because every time we end up having a different manager. Never seems to be on the same sort of wavelength of what they're trying to do.
I think ultimately we need to accept that this idea of having a philosophy, unless you're a Premier League side and you're attracting the likes of Pep Guardiola or someone who's been around and you know what they're about. Jurgen Klopp, everyone knows he likes his high press football. Pep Guardiola, everyone knows what you're going to get with him. Jose Mourinho, you know what you're going to get. Right, unless you're a big name, let's stop with this nonsense that, this manager plays this way, this manager plays that way. We've got to sign players like Villalba to play fancy football for Pep Clotet. Whoever thought Pep Clotet was associated with fancy football? And this idea of dong ball is a load of crap. All right. So let's stop this idea. We've got to sign players for a certain thing and look at what we're signing. What are they like as a character in the dressing room? Are they going to be another Harley Dean, another Scott Hogan, these poison apples, these people who want to piss and moan because they've been dropped for a few games or they're not performing, they're not scoring, or, I've made a few mistakes, I'm feeling sorry for myself. Stop signing these players and sign the players that want to put the effort in and go, do you know what? I'm struggling, I need to step my game up here. there's not enough competition for places for these players either. That's the problem. Scott Hogan, that's fine. He's not scoring a few games. He looks at the bench. What's he got? Lukas Jukovic, who's past his best.
Exactly. There's nothing to really give you that kick up the backside, is there?
No. Harley Dean, he looks at the bench. Harley Dean looks at the bench. You've got Clark Salter, who can't be asked because he's on loan. We've said that numerous times in previous episodes anyway. You've got Mark Roberts, who's only good for a long throw, and you've got George Friend, who can only last half a game, and he's knackered anyway. So are these players really under threat? Is his position under threat? He's the captain. He shouldn't be.
That's the thing. The only way that you can ever, as you said, the big names definitely always have a philosophy. Peps, Jose Mourinho, Klopp. The only way that you can do that some level, like in the Championship, is like your Brentfords and Swanseas, where they have patience and normal and stable owners who will take patience and will want the same thing, whatever happens. These do not have patience, and they change their mind like the weather. They don't know what's going on. Hopefully now we can start talking more positively about the man in charge now. Hopefully, but it's
ultimately though. And you mentioned Norwich and Brentford, and you are right. They've got these, Farker. You know what you expect from a Norwich side. They're very similar in a sense to they're almost a Championship beat at Liverpool in the sense they're going to press high. They want to play this football. They want to play it all in your half. At Brentford, you know what you're going to get, but you've got Ivan Toner. Ultimately, it's still the squad of players. It's not the philosophy that gets them to where they are to a degree. It's the squad of players. You could play long ball with Norwich, you'd still get the wins. You could play long ball with Brentford, you've still got Ivan Toney banging you 20, 25 goals a season. These players make the difference. Yeah.
Whatever way you want to play football, you need match winners.
Yeah. And until we sign the right players for this squad to be able to say, oh, well, if we want to play this way, we've got we've got a Pookie. We want to play this way, we've got Tony, and so on. You've got Buendia, who's the match, the difference 9 times out of 10. Whenever I watch him, he has an input in a game. I don't like him, but to a degree, Todd Cantwell, he can make a difference. If the Blues have only got one. You've only got Sanchez or Bella, really. You stick 2 men on them, that's fine. Let the rest of the squad try and make a difference. None of them can do it. They're not good enough.
It comes down to recruitment, mate. With the decisions above the manager's head and the recruitment, and the fact that we've completely outsourced our recruitment to probably a couple of lads that are playing Football Manager in France and Spain.
Dan.
And
Dan and Jamie from our podcast.
Do you know what I mean? And this is the problem we've got. And we can't, at the same time, we seem to just think, oh, let's just copy someone else's model. Brentford are doing this, let's do this. Let's buy a couple of Brentford players. Let's get a B team in place.
How about Birmingham? How about Birmingham City?
Why can't we just be ourselves? You don't see Millwall trying to copy someone else. Millwall have always had their own way of playing. They put 110% in. They grow. They have leaders. They're strong all over the park. They know
very
how
similar to us. How we used to be.
Exactly. They know.
And you look at their manager.
Yeah, exactly. And they make it uncomfortable for you. They make it as uncomfortable as possible. They don't let other sides come to their place and play. That's all. So, but we need a complete overhaul. I hope that Lee Bowyer is the start of it. I hope that he will have a lot of input now into the recruitment, because I feel like he's done quite well in terms of the recruitment, especially at Charlton, on no money. And he's been relatively successful. We got them up. Okay, he got relegated last season, but let's be honest, it was probably a 92nd minute Jukovic equaliser that probably relegated them in the end, a couple of games from the end of the season. It was
his best player dropped out, didn't he?
Yeah, it was that. Yeah, exactly. His best player decided that, he down tools, he didn't want to play.
Was that David Davis while he was on loan?
And this is the situation now we're in, and I hope we can look forward now slightly. Obviously, there is a big cog that needs to go, but in terms of Bowyer, I think we're all pretty pleased, aren't we? And pretty chuffed.
I think so. I hope, like you say, he doesn't get a bad rap if we do go down as many of us fear, because it's ultimately that if we're down, it's because the damage is already done.
Yeah, 100%.
You look at the fixtures now; he's on a hiding to nothing for the next 4 games. At the end of this weekend, going into tonight's fixtures, our next 4 games are against 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th in the league. So a team that's struggling and have just been, let's be honest, battered at home to a Bristol City team with nothing to play for already. Just on the back of 2 defeats in a row as well. Did we really think that playing 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th would bring us points? And did we really look at our next 10 games and go, we can still do this? So we've got to cut him some slack. We've got to be prepared, whatever league we're in next season. Bowyer's in charge. He's got to have our full back in, and we've got to give him that time. And I think if we do drop down, I think he's the man to steady the ship and take us back up. And if we do stay up, I think he's the right man to be able to say, right, I know what I need. I've been here before. I know what the fans expect. I know what I need in this squad. This is who I want. Sign me them. This is who I want out. Yeah. Get rid.
Absolutely.
Got the vibes of Gary Rowett, hasn't it?
Yeah. And if you're some of those players in that changing room who have been, let's be honest, a few of them have obviously been chomping for a change and haven't wanted Karanka there for some time. Hopefully now you're seeing a manager come in that, only 10 years ago was winning major honours with the club. He's a fully committed player in his time. Hopefully they're going to look up to him and take everything on board and are going to put in that extra 10, 20% that they haven't been putting in for the last couple of weeks.
I think a big thing for Bowyer as well, and these players, some of them that have been there for years, have been known down tools at the end of a manager's time. They know this time with someone like Lee Bowyer, we're going to turn on them first before we turn on the manager. Because Lee Bowyer, one thing, when you've got no connection to the club, it's very easy to turn on the manager because there's no connection apart from the time he's been there now. But it's a bit like, the Solskjaer thing at United. I'm not saying he's doing bad now. Obviously, it's a different scenario, United to us. But there was times when he was under pressure, and not once with the fans as a whole against him, because they appreciate that he knows what the club's about. And Lee Bowyer knows what we're about. And although he played for better teams than us, his best achievement, he said, was that cup at Blues. And I really hope that whatever happens, we can get right behind him. And I'm desperate for a manager to be there longer than a season to put his own stamp on a team, instead of picking up the last 3-4 managers' teams, and players that down tools for every manager we've had. Keep getting a fresh start. I hope that Lee Bowyer's the man now going forward. Because let's face it, if he does keep us up, the welcome back he'll get when the stadium's there, when the fans are back in the stadium, if the stadium hasn't collapsed, he'll get a hero's welcome because he gets us. And I just hope that it can be a success for him.
You mentioned these players as well, that they realise now that we're going to turn on them first, and you think they should know that they should expect it anyway. I think you look at, like Elliot said earlier on, Harley Dean, the Mark Roberts is and a couple of others have played under, signed by Redknapp, then they were under Cottrell, then they were under, Monk and so on. And with the exception of Gary Monk, have any of them actually had a decent time at the club? No, they haven't. So, and you look at the amount of managers that have been and gone in that time, you start to look at them players and you think you're still in the lineup, the side from 5 managers ago, and you're still failing. So surely they should know that they're clearly part of the problem. They should expect a backlash from the fans, and rightly so, because they're not putting the effort in. Like you say, if Bowyer comes in now and Harley Dean is, you'd assume, going to get into his lineup for the rest of the season at least. If you don't see an improvement from him, what's going to happen? Are the fans? Does he think in his mind the fans will blame Bowyer, or do they think finally everyone will open their eyes and go, Harley Dean really is shit, isn't it?
I'll tell you one thing, that there will not be, unless we lost the last 10 games 8-0 at a time, there will not be people going, Bowyer's the wrong man. They will back him as much as they can, even if they're sceptical, because I think although we like him and he's done a good job at Charlton, we're all sceptical about what can happen this season, whether he can keep us up. But we will back him all the way, because the one thing he'll always bring to the job is passion. It's like Lee Clark. Was he a master tactician? No. And even when, and his time ran out and it was a time for change. And we knew sometimes he could have done better, even though he's in a ridiculously hard job. We'd always back him because you knew he was doing everything that he could.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? You know, we know what to expect from Bowyer, because we're going to get the same from Bowyer, the manager, as we got from Bowyer, the player, and that is 100% commitment. He knows everything that the club's about, and it's about time that the players had a bit of an awakening.
Yeah, another thing that I like about him, like, you know, he wasn't a Blues fan. Yeah, he played for us and he won a cup, but he wasn't a Blues fan. But I remember watching that video, the 10-year anniversary, when it was him, Roger Johnson and Ben Foster. And you could see the passion that they were speaking about, even now, 10 years on from playing for us. You could see the passion that they had for it. You could see that they loved the time. They loved their time there, and they want nothing but the best for us. So, and he's proven himself to be a decent manager. I think it was probably the right time, possibly for both sides to pass, Bowyer and Charlton, because it did go a tiny bit stale at parts this season. So, but I think he's proved himself, and as I said earlier, it does give me the feeling of a bit like, you know, it's got the chance to be a bit like the Gary Rowett appointment.
Draw comparisons to his time at Charlton in many ways. We spoke off air before recording about Wilder and how Charlton fans think they should be getting Chris Wilder as their next manager. And obviously we were saying how Sheffield United should never have been in the Premier League to begin with, you know, and now they're judging him on the fact they're going down. And compare that in a sense, should Lee Bowyer he should never have took Charlton up, should he, realistically?
Especially with the ownership there.
You know, yeah, the ownership issues there and what have you. And people saying, oh, well, he's got a relegation on his CV with Charlton. Well, should he have been in the Championship to begin with? That in itself was an achievement. Never mind the relegation, getting them into the Championship. That should be applauded, because Charlton weren't anything special.
He stood by them in the hardest moments, didn't he? He was the man who led them through it.
I think you look at his time as in managing Charlton should be looked at in that season where he got them up in the playoffs. He should never have got into the playoffs. He should never have gotten to the Championship. And if he can bring 50% of what he brought into that Charlton team, into the Blues team, we're going to have, I don't know what, but we're going to have a more successful time under him than we have under at least the past couple of managers. And you think Gary Monk done a good job. I think Lee Bowyer could do a better job going forward than Gary Monk done for us. That's not knocking Gary Monk, but I think if you give Bowyer the time and the backing that he deserves, who knows what he could be capable of in the next 2-3 years.
Because he's starting off as a hero, isn't he?
Yeah, he's already got that bond. He doesn't need to prove himself to us. It's all there for him on a plate. You've just got to hope that if the CEO's sticking around, he sees what we see. And if he's not, then get someone in who understands football and understands the club. And all of a sudden, then things are looking a lot more positive already. I know that the next 10 games or whatever else, like we said, if we have to start from League One, we go from there and we build. He's already proven he can get a team out of that league. And I'd like to think that if we go down to League One, we'd be in a better position than what Charlton were when he took them over in League One.
Yeah,
so
I agree. I don't know about you guys, but I feel more positive now. Even at the prospect, if we go down, I still feel quite positive, you know, and I won't feel too down about us going down at the end of the season, because, you know, I think we can all be honest that we've not competed in the Championship for the last 3 or 4 or 5 years. We just haven't been able to compete at this level, and maybe we do need to go down and regroup and start again and bring in players that are hungry, young, hungry players that want to be successful and actually want to further their careers. Because, like we've already touched on and spoken about, I think there's a lot of players in that squad at the moment that are not hungry, got no intention or no desire to improve, and are just going through the motions.
Yeah, and I think ultimately, as we've said numerous times, if that squad can be looked at properly over the summer, and he knows, I mean, he will know just from today alone, watching training, who really cares and who doesn't. And he will have seen what's happened in the past few weeks and these comments that have been made by players and so on. He'll know already what has gone down well with these fans and what hasn't, because he knows the club and he understands it. And you'd like to think he's looking at these players now and saying, in the back of his mind, you're on borrowed time under my regime. And like I say, I think in the summer, the sooner we can shift them players out and start to put his own stamp on that squad, the better. And hopefully they give him more than 2 money-affected transfer windows in order to do it.
Yeah,
we need someone there for 2 or 3 seasons, unless it don't go to plan again and we scrape in the barrel. But we need someone with 2 or 3 seasons to make it their team.
I agree, mate. I think let's today's a positive day, and not least some of the results tonight, which have been good. But today's a positive day because on Sunday, my fear was we were going to get a manager in that's currently on the scrap heap, out of the job, and it was going to be a short-term solution again. And we've actually gone for a manager that was in a job, and he's been motivated enough to go in Monday morning and his resignation in and say, look, I want to go to Birmingham. That's what we want. That is what we want. It probably wasn't any talk of money. It was just a case of, I want to go to Birmingham. Let's be honest, it was probably in the pipeline for a week or 2 in the lead up to the Bristol City game, because I don't think conversations like that just happen that quickly. I'm sure that Lee Bowyer probably knew that there was interest probably a week or 2 ago. And
well, the statement did say, didn't it, when we announced him, he's a manager we've admired for quite some time.
Yeah.
Now, you'd assume that goes back to the summer, perhaps, before Karanka, but you'd like to think that, like you say, that's been revisited in the past week or 2.
Also, you're not getting a manager. You're not getting a manager from another club in a matter of 24 hours, are you?
No.
You're not just going to, by the way, we're taking you. No, it's going to be, because he's going to have to sit down and think about that properly as well. Although it's his ex-club and he'd love it, he's got to think, is it right to leave Charlton?
He must have thought everything that we think. We look at that and go, why on earth would he take this job because of this, this and this? And you'd like to think he sat there and thought about the same situations and the same problems and issues behind the scenes and what have you. You'd imagine he's took the time to think about that and said, I'm walking from one mess of a club into another effectively. Is it right? I'm settled in what I'm in. And he still decided to jump.
Charlton had more stable owners now. So we had a chance, if he was still there in the summer, to start properly rebuilding under a trusted regime. But he still took the chance here. So whatever we've got to do, we've got to back him, because as Elliot said, I was convinced Sunday that we was going to have Pulis for 10 games.
I know, we heard about it enough.
I was convinced.
Every single print screen in the group chat was about you worrying about Pulis.
Don't get me wrong, Pulis is a manager that over the years I've respected because he's done good jobs. But it seemed, if it was before Sheffield Wednesday, he probably would have said 10 games. But you can't take someone who's been sacked after 9-10 games at Sheffield Wednesday and they're below us.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that was a worry. And even someone like, Neil Harris, which, I wouldn't have been dead against, but it would have been, I wouldn't have felt as positive about Neil Harris as I do about Lee Bowyer. And particularly, like I just said, he's literally left the job. And like Dan was just alluding to there, Charlton are on the way back up. They've got owners that are back in that club now, and they might not quite sneak into the playoffs this season, although they're not a million miles away. But they're definitely going to be a force next season. So he's definitely left a job there that, you know, it was a solid job for him. Put it that way.
Yeah, and like you say, I think ultimately that gives us that bit extra as well. Like you say, knowing that he's wanted to come in, not just because my situation at Charlton's not great. He's actively gone in, like you say, handed his notice in and said, that's where I want to be. That's where I see my future. And I think that, again, we keep referring to, that's what our players have got to be. Like, they've got to want to be here as well. And if they don't want to be involved, then let them go. Let them go for free. I don't care. Get rid of them. Get off the books.
The ones who were there under managers, under the managers since Redknapp signed most of these players and so on, the other managers. Most of these players that were here under Gary Monk should think this is a great chance now. They've managed to keep us up, to return to some positive times like that. Remember, they're surely going to think, I want to be back at the times where all the fans were stood on their feet singing all of our names, couldn't love us anymore. They've got to be desperate to get back to that. And with Lee Bowyer in charge, we're going to be 110% behind them.
Yeah. I mean...
Yeah, I agree.
Well, we'll speak again after the weekend. Watford on Saturday, Reading tomorrow, Watford Saturday.
And we're discussing the next managerial appointment.
So when we're discussing Bowyer's, we'll have obviously discuss two defeats and Bowyer's sacking. And obviously what's next. So we'll catch up again.
Whatever's left of Dung's party bag.
The sequel.
Must be a good party bag, that's all I'll say.
It's kept him in a job, so...
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll wrap that up there because I'm sick of hearing about Elliot's rants now anyway. So, yeah. Thanks for tuning in anyway. Obviously, if you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe to the channel. Check out the website, bcfcmedia.co.uk. Follow us on the socials at bcfcmedia. And until then, we'll speak to you soon.